Welcome to People I Think Are Cool. I'm your host, Liz Reed, one part of the art duo Cuddles and Rage, and this is my podcast where I interview cool, interesting, creative people. Today on the show, we have Kassandra Heller. She is one of the art directors on the Disney show Big City Greens, and I have to say that I had a really cool moment when I was back in Texas with Jimmy's family. When our niece and nephew were like begging to watch the show. They were like, Big City Greens, we gotta watch this. So I don't have kids, so I didn't know about the show until I met Kassandra. And just to be in like a real life experience where people were, kids, the age group they were for, were like genuinely excited. I was like, oh, I have talked to somebody who works on the show. Amazing. Just a really cool, life connection experience. Kassandra is really talented. I am in love with her passion for color palettes and her eye for design. I mean, you can even see it in her setup for the interview. And we just had a really great chat. It has been, I have to apologize to Kassandra because it has been a long time since the interview to where we are now. Life just kind of got in the way, but it is a wonderful evergreen interview. There's so much to learn, as creatives and especially for artists who, like me, really struggle with color. And talking to Kassandra, she's worked in different fields. So it was like a fun, just kind of like navigation of her. That sounds really robotic, navigation. A fun tour of her career and all the things that she's taken on. Really inspiring. So enjoy this interview with the lovely Kassandra.
Yeah.
Do you prefer Kassandra or Kassandra?
It's Kassandra. I respond to both. I'm so used to both, but I'm from like Michigan, so I got to have that nasally Kassandra.
Kassandra.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
When I'm in the South, everyone says Kassandra, and I like that. It sounds sophisticated. I just don't know her,
Yeah, you don't know her. Who is that person? Yeah. Right. So, I actually don't know that much about like your background in yeah. I don't know that much about your background in animation, so I would love to start there.
Yeah. In animation, I started at Cartoon Network. I don't even know, like 10 years ago. And that was my first union job, I should say. I was at a couple of non-union studios. And then Cartoon Network really, it feels like it kicked off my actual animation career in a way, because one thing just kind of kept leading to the next, like one show kept leading to the next show. And but I started at Cartoon Network on a show called Clarence, and got freelance, a lot of freelance for Adventure Time and Mighty Magiswords. And so while I was at Cartoon Network for about 4 or 5 years, I kind of I was a background painter for a few different projects, but mostly my home base was on a show called Clarence, and that show ran for I'm not sure how many seasons, because Cartoon Network splits up their seasons really weird, where it's like technically I think it was 4 seasons, but online it was like 7 seasons or something. At the same time, my husband also works in animation, and him and his brother, Chris and Shane Houghton, were collaborating on greenlighting a show with Disney, and I was helping color in development for them. And when their show got greenlit, I jumped ship and went over to Disney to work on their show, which is called Big City Greens. And it's on the Disney Channel and Disney Plus. And and I was a background painter on Big City Greens for a couple years. I got kind of a mini promotion to color supervisor, helping out my art director at the time. And then when my art director on the show moved on, I was promoted up to art director, which I've been an art director since the start of the pandemic. I think I had a month in the office, and then we all went we went home to work, and which very fortunate to get to work from home, but at the same time, wild to learn the job while we're working from home. And I've been an art director since then.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you wish you had an office space at all just to see the people that you're interacting with?
Yeah. We have such a great office culture and crew, and everybody really gets along. You know, I definitely would have loved to have started out art directing in the office and had that, like, more one-on-one times with my team. But very recently, actually, we're starting to go back into the office. So I'm getting to have that experience now. And it's very much based on people's comfort level in coming in to the office. So I've seen half of the team that works for me, and half of the team prefers to work from home. So yeah, it's been really great to finally get to work in the office, and work with like my production team more directly. And honestly, you just can't beat like the computer and internet service and all that stuff.
Right. You don't have to be your own IT as much.
Yeah. And I work with my husband on the same show, which has never been a problem. But then working from home for about 2.5 years on the same show it's a little too small. It's just too small of a house for the two of us constantly working on the same show and like kind of dealing with some of the same frustrations. And it's nice to have my own office and
Yes.
and not like, and also like get away from my mess, get away from my house, get away from the delivery, interrupting and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of a part-time in between working from home, and I guess it's a hybrid situation. And sometimes I just decide to work from home like today, and sometimes I go in the office. Best of both worlds now.
Yeah. With art directing, do you need a background in animation or did you go to school for animation even?
No, not at all. I went to College for Creative Studies in Detroit, and I got my bachelor's in fine art I majored in illustration. And I thought that I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I went to college. I just knew I had to do something creative. That was like my only goal. I also didn't really, I didn't need to stay in Michigan because I didn't have really any roots there. So I was like, I'll just do anything, anywhere, as long as it's creative. Because I had many restaurant jobs before that. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not, it's not even the restaurant job. It was just having a job where you are just like constantly looking at the clock and just, I just had to do something else. So college made sense. And I think it was because it made sense to my mom. I was like 19 years old. I had graduated high school early. And I had been working odd end jobs and, trying to make ends meet. And when I was like, okay, I'm at my wit's end, I think college just made sense. Like that's a thing you do after high school. I don't think it's like necessary art school. I think it's like an amazing experience if you can get into it. It's like 4 years of just focusing on your own art, which is quite the privilege and everything, but it's also not totally necessary for animation. If you're self-motivated, you can, build up your portfolio and get a test and directly go into animation. I just kind of, I started out in comics and
really? Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, I did a lot of covers for Boom Studios, especially. I did a little bit of work for The Simpsons, and a little bit for just a smattering for a little bit of a bunch of the studios. I actually did a lot of like Cartoon Network comics for Boom Studios, coloring and covers. And I collaborated with my husband too, like with covers, and I did a lot of gallery shows around LA. So I was just trying to figure out what I could do with this illustration major. But and then I found out there was this thing like background painting, and I guess I found out that animation is not literally like animating. Like it's a pipeline. So everybody's job is so specific that I realized there's a lot of jobs for an artist who is an illustrator, or who specializes in color, or specializes in just the design or story. So I always had a knack for color. Even at school, my teachers were always like, "You really get color." And so when I started in animation, I was like, I think background painting would be my calling in this industry, and got a few, like, again, non-union jobs that didn't pay that great and didn't credit me correctly either, which is a bummer. But that's okay. That's a different IMDb page. But then I got my job at Cartoon Network, and I really got into the flow of being a background painter. And I love that job. It's wonderful.
It sounds like a fun job. You're the second person that I've talked to who kind of like went to school on the East Coast and then flew all the way out to LA, who worked in comics and then became like a background painter and for an Amazon Prime show out in LA. So it just seems like that if you're really good at color, like you're right, like that's a really amazing path to get into. So what is your secret to color? Because I personally find color like so hard. I mean, especially the mixing part of it, but just also, people who can take a beautiful palette without having to steal it from somebody else. That truly is a gift. I think that it was just practicing, but yeah, studying from, master paintings is not a bad idea, of like looking at, that's how I learned. I had a teacher that was all about teaching you how to paint with like real paints that I never paint with real paint anymore. I'm more of a digital artist now, but at the time I think it did help to have the hands-on and just mixing your own palettes. And I think the best place to start is trying to do limited palettes and focusing more on value. I think value is almost more important than color, meaning like your darks, your whites, and your midtones, and I think a limited palette is always really successable. Maybe lots of blues and different hues of blue, and then playing around with maybe having like a blue forest, and then like in the middle a warm campfire of some sort. And how would the characters be like, or the characters? I've been working into animation too long. How are the things around that like illuminated? I think that's kind of, one of my best aha moments was looking at more limited palettes, or even looking at how other artists like handle a limited palette, and even going back to having traditional paints or pencils. I sometimes loved grabbing a random bunch of color pencils and like going out to draw from life, and realizing you're stuck with whatever colors you have, and trying to make that work was always a fun challenge. Oh, I love that. I love that. Like,
and sometimes you're really surprised. Like I really like just having teal, peach, and, brown as to color, to try and, to paint a picture in a way.
Well, I mean, with that limited color palette, that seems to lend itself like really well to background painting, because I feel like for people who haven't really studied art, or, studied specifically animation or, even just like writing for comics, you don't want the background to take away from the foreground. You want your characters to pop, as you know. So when you started out in like background painting, or even when you were working on the pilot, were you like very conscious about exactly the color palette that you wanted, or like early on was that already designed for you in the first show that you worked on?
The first show I worked on, I just tried my hardest to do what I thought my art director wanted me to do. And I think a lot of that was learning how much attention a background should take from the main characters. And then other times just falling back and being like not the star of the show. And a lot of times doing really keyed color palettes help, bring out the characters so that they're not, getting lost. Because there are times personally, I see shows that are like way too much to look at and it's quick and your eyes are like, your main goal as almost for anything that you work on is making sure you're able to influence where your viewers are looking. And background painting is very much like a lot like, especially for animation, it's a lot like theater sets where you're there to help like tell the story. Sometimes you're telling the story literally like right alongside the writers, the directors, everyone. And then sometimes you're telling your own story in background colors and background design, where you're trying to show a story for Big Sea Greens, you're showing a story of, despite these characters doing their thing, living their life or whatever adventure they're going through, in the background, time is moving. You're seeing a sunset, sunrise, a night palette, and things are, changing, and the characters have no choice in that. And that sometimes is helping tell the story of like the stakes of the situation or the end of a situation. And a lot of times our characters feel like defeated. So like after a long journey, it's kind of nice to put in a sunset palette where they're feeling like, oh, we didn't get the goal of what we were after. And now it's sunset, or now it's nighttime, that feeling of like, bummer. And then, and with color, you can kind of really like help, tell that narrative of like, yep, the day is over with, go home, go to sleep. And then of course, some great ending of, just summarize, like finishing up the episode happens. But anyways, it's, so I think that you can express a lot of that kind of stuff in palettes, but yeah, I think when in doubt, keying everything to one color really can help just keep the characters centered and focused.
That makes sense. And I love the comparison to a theater set because, truly amazing set designers can take the simplest materials and make you feel like you're in a completely different world. So that is an amazing comparison.
Right.
Let's take it to current day, because you're an art director now. Like, you did the backgrounds, but here you are. So how did the job change?
It's funny, for however many years, probably my whole life, I'm an artist, kind of alone, just like focused. And even at Disney, our cubes have these thick curtains that wrap around our cubes so that we're in like the dark.
Wow. So you don't get a room. It's like their compromise of, you don't get a room, but we'll give you the feeling.
Curtains. Well, it's like it's really tall cubes, but then the top is like these curtains. And I think it's so that the light doesn't reflect off your Cintiq and monitors.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is you work very like independently, and even like, honestly, if you can problem solve when you're on your own a bit, like I don't know, like work through lunch or whatever you need to do. It's very like, you're just this like hermit that lives in isolation on an island. And then when you get promoted to a manager, suddenly you have to interact with people. And that's probably the biggest change as a art director is I think the art side of the job, it's definitely changed. I have a lot more decision making and but that's kind of the fun part. And that's the part that you've always been able to do, like just like learning new art, learning new like processes and goals in your creativity. But then this other element of like, oh, I have to like now communicate to other people and like and like I like to, you know, like make sure that we're sharing in this like project, because all of animation is so collaborative. And the best part of comics, if you're you know, you're usually working with just a couple of people, a lot of it is your like creation, and whereas animation, you have so many people and there's so many moving parts. So yeah, I think that the biggest change is just this like is delegating work to other people, and and then right alongside me, I collaborate with our production team, who is just making sure that they have all the pieces of art to send to our overseas team. And so that's the biggest change. And it's like a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because I love working with other people. I really admire and respect like all the artists and all the production crew. But it's also hard because humans are flawed and emotional. And also during a pandemic, you know, you have to be so thoughtful to the fact that everyone's lives have changed. And so it's been interesting, even just in that aspect, where it's like my job to make sure the show happens. And I have there's another art director on the show. So they essentially took one art director and split it into two jobs, which has been amazing because we've been able to elevate the look of the show, because we've had way more manpower and or woman power, and we've expanded the art department on our show. But at the same time, like there's got to be a lot of care and thought, and you know, like let's just say I did not play Animal Crossing when the pandemic started. Like everyone else, I know, it's so sad. I was like trying so hard. I'd get on my little island and try and collect some things, and I'd be so tired I'd fall asleep. And all that to say is it was very time consuming, and just that on its own, just like managing other people and other artists is still like constantly like the hardest part of my job.
Oh yeah, I believe it. My husband like manages a lot of people, and it is, I mean, you become a therapist in a way.
a little bit. And just, and also, you know, taking what I liked about my other art directors and, you know, with the union, you know, reading about what other people have dealt with and everything, I'm like, oh, I really want to wrap up my career one day and say that like I did this with my like moral compass, and I tried to be the art director I wanted to be, and you know, do my hardest at like also making the show look good, but in a way that is reasonable for a TV show as well. You know, you only have so much time. You have to call something done so that it can go get out of my life and go on TV.
They're expecting a deliverable. You better give it.
Yeah.
Do you get to make art anymore for the show, or is it mostly just the delegating part?
I still paint a lot of backgrounds. I do a lot of like revising when I have to. And my new favorite part of the job, which I did not have anything to do with as a background painter, But now as an art director, I work a lot in post-production when we get the show back from our overseas studio. I work very closely with our technical directors on the final look. And I always think of it as like, when you're like creating an art piece on Photoshop and it looks fine, everyone says it looks fine, but you put those last layers on, like those last special little touches, and now you're like so excited about it. That's what post-production is like to me. It's not to say it isn't a challenge, but it's definitely it's so fun to be able to ask like my technical director, like, hey, can this glow? Can this sparkle? Can we animate a light like coming from these doors and hitting the characters? And we'll work together on making that happen. And that feels like an art project to me. And I really like that part.
Oh yeah, that's where it takes it from good to great. Like you're living in this scene when you get the dialogue, you get the music and the little touches like you're talking about.
And that's also something I don't understand is, the part where I don't like, I work on the art assets, but when I see somebody else doing like the editing and like literally being like, can you remove 2 seconds or 2 frames here? And can you, like move the camera here? I'm like, that's all magic to me. And I love seeing how it looks at the end because it's definitely just makes everything like the episode just really tight and there's like no time wasted. It's the whole episode is like perfect and I love it. Love seeing that part. And like, and seeing the music mixed in and everything is like, wow, I don't know how that happens. It's amazing.
It's magic. They probably don't know how you do what you do. So it's a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
So you work in like the traditional, television setting. And, we kind of live in a world where you can make tons of money. Okay, like 1% of the population can make tons of money off YouTube, being their own like production house and everything and doing all the steps that you outlined, significantly on their own, but like also calling in for help. Do you see those two worlds, like traditional animation shows and kind of like the more independent side? Do you see them competing with each other at any point, as people's interests change, or just staying parallel in two different worlds?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't see them competing. I think we share a common interest. And Big City Greens have been lucky to create a lot of online content or on like just stuff for YouTube, short clips and things like that, which has been a really fun way to put out like little bits of our show because traditional like animation that goes on your TV takes like 9 months to make.
Right. You're like, I was working on that 2 years ago.
Yeah, it takes so long. So something that goes on YouTube can be done so quickly and so directly interacting with their fans and very niche, but I think that works well as like a parallel. I think they both have the same common interests of just like using animation as a tool to tell stories. And but I'm excited to see where this goes. You know what I mean? Because YouTube gets more views than I could ever imagine. I mean, honestly, or like online. Gosh, I hate to call it content. Online, animation.
Oh, it is content though.
Content, yeah. Okay. It gets so much more viewership than what you see on like TV. It's almost like old school, like cable types of views where it's, I think, I don't know how many views Big City Greens gets on Disney Channel. It's high in comparison to other kids shows, but it's also not anything like SpongeBob in the heyday of like when everyone had cable television.
Yeah,
but,
right.
but you see YouTube like getting just as much, like millions of views on one clip, and it's just that's amazing. And I think it's kind of becoming the preferred way that people want to watch things. I think also the short format is nice, like
Yeah.
just a little few minutes, just a couple minute cartoon, and it's definitely a lot easier to animate a couple minutes rather than 11-minute show. So
Oh yeah. I mean, you see some people do it online, but then you look at how often they post, and it's like every 6 months. And
right,
that works for
yeah,
them. And I think
yeah.
it's also worth mentioning for people going that route that I read somewhere that like people who, or I was listening to a podcast, people who do like animate their own shows online get paid barely nothing compared to like the personalities or the how-to videos, because you kind of have to already have your audience there to know that I like your content versus somebody Googling like, how do I change a light bulb? And you just happen upon it.
That's so true. Yeah. And I have to hope that everyone is, because I work in a union, it's definitely protected me from to get like paid well, and to like there's a union minimum as far as pay, and then also like health insurance, and they make sure you're not working unpaid overtime and all that stuff. But when you're doing something for YouTube, I don't know what, if there's anything that can be done as far as keeping people safe from, being overworked. You should not be doing all-nighters for anyone but yourself. Invest that time for yourself.
I love that. It's so true. And I don't think the gaming industry has a union at the moment.
Right. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure they don't, but I don't know, but they might. I'm sure they've always had talks to do something like that, because that industry is really abusive when it comes to
I've heard
long
like
hours.
There's some people that get paid like bonkers, like crazy money. And then some people, I guess it depends on how well your game does. But again, that's kind of relying on your like higher ups of these studios to give you the part of the pie that you deserve. And that's a really kind thing to do, but it's, it seems like it's one of the first things to get cut is like the payment that goes to the artist. It's almost like, well, we could pay people less. We always find someone to pay to do the same job for less, which becomes then pretty like, then nobody's getting paid much for something that's making a lot of money.
Well, that's where all the animation, like you said, you send it overseas. So much animation doesn't happen in the States. It's just kind of sent over.
Right, which is very frustrating. And even I speak a big game about the union even, but it's like our union, we can do better. We still like, we're still like up in this kind of constant like argument with the studios on trying to bump people's wages because inflation is just going up like crazy. And if you're requiring us to live in LA and everything, then rent here is nuts and all that stuff. But
right. I need to buy my oat milk, damn it.
I know. This is supposed to be like a career where you're able to like, not just like work tirelessly. You're supposed to have like vacations and save money and all that good stuff. So not to say we're not, but it is very I think like also working on the show I'm working on is like its own privilege because it's a long running show and I don't see an end anytime soon. Whereas a lot of shows, especially streaming shows, are very short. Like you work on it for less than a year and then you have to look for another job. And and maybe you should be compensated more for that because you're not in a like stable, long running, job. but
Yeah. Oh man, when I need to ask for more money, I'll come to you and be like, tell me what I need.
I love talking business and money. So yes.
Wow, that is rare. That's like church and politics. So yes, I'll come to you.
Yeah.
So I saw that there's a movie coming
Mhm.
out for your show. So are you guys hands-on with that, or is that completely separate?
It's its own crew and everything. I'm
Weird.
trying to get I would love to paint like a background or something just to put my name in the credits. But no, it's yeah, Chris and Shane, they talked to me and my and the other art director, Steve Lotway, and they were like, we really want you to just stay on the series. It'll run forever anyways, versus going over to the movie. But I've been seeing what's going on with the movie, and it's like wildly beautiful, ambitious, like amazing work. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just like, I wish I could have a little hand in it, but I don't. I have nothing to do with it.
So hard because you're there from the beginning. It's like
I know.
passing a little baby on.
I know. It's so like it does feel like that because yeah, I like worked on the development and I'm like, I can't believe I have nothing to do with their first movie, but I've been watching it. It looks great. I've been the supportive wife in this instant, just watching it and being like, it looks great. I love it.
Well, you can always whisper in his ear, like, maybe that should change.
I always joke about like doing a voice, which I'm not a voice actress at all, so I'll never do a voice, but I'm just trying to find any way I can possibly. I'm going to be craft services or something. I want to be in the credits.
Yeah, get that credit. You deserve it.
That also might be it might be my only chance to be on a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Get in there.
Well, you at least make special thanks if there's that part, right?
I hope so. I better. Yeah.
Well, you'll have a talk if you don't make it there. You're talking about the show going on for, a long time and continuing to have a long life.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to answer this how you wish. But do you have a fear of like complacency, staying on the same show for so long?
I think that I haven't had that fear yet, but I don't think it's because I think I haven't learned everything there is to learn about art directing on Big City Greens. Like, I think once I get tired of working on the show, I think that'll be a sign that I've reached the most I can do. But at the same time, I'm just getting to a point, gosh, I don't know, 3 or 2 years in, I've lost track, but I've just gotten to a point where I feel like, oh, I think I have a grasp on this. I think I understand how to manage and how to delegate people, or not delegate people, delegate the art, but also not like absorb too much of the art myself. That to be honest, at the end of season 3, we finished season 3, and the last few episodes, probably the last 10 episodes, I really took on a lot myself, and was just had like no personal time, or just felt like I was too tired to have like any personal like hobbies or anything. And so we're starting season 4 in September. And I'm like looking at that like as this new challenge of like, okay, how do I be an art director, also maintain like the level of quality I want for the show, but also like delegate properly so that I'm not taking on too much, and everybody feels good and happy. So I guess to answer your question, once I'm like completely bored, or I feel like I've like managed that, I think I could see myself trying to move on. I don't know if I would stay in animation. I think that I would maybe move on to a different type of career, because I could really see this being the height of my career. Like, and I say that because I'm invested as much as Shane and Chris are. I'm not the showrunner, but I obviously a bit more invested in this. So unless another project came around and I was just as excited about it, like I could see this also after a few years being like my last gig in animation and maybe trying out comics again. And again, investing all that like willpower and time back into just my own personal project. I have a few stories in my noggin that I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'll ever get those down on paper. And and hey, maybe being an art director and being at this kind of like full speed, type of pace, I can put that into my own thing like after this and actually create something.
That's perfect. Well, for one, I'm happy you're not bored yet. You just got promoted, so calm down. No, you're in a great spot,
Right.
and I love your thought behind it about learning more, but then also being aware. If you get to a certain point, because I think in every job that we've had, you've seen that person that has just been in that same dark curtained off area for a decade, and it's always like, how did you get there to that point? And maybe they're totally happy with that position, and that's completely fine. But I guess just hearing you talk, you're a very like motivated person and very passionate, and you're a great manager because I can hear you caring about other people. A lot of people don't get into a position of, I don't, for lack of a better word, power or authority, which does sound like a bit like dirty, but without having empathy for others.
Right.
So it sounds like you got a good thing going for you.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we're all just working on a big art project together. So, it's kind of my job well, maybe not my job to care, but I think that's why I have this position, because I care. And I really like believe in the show and everything. And I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I think also, when I've always been told like 7 years is a good run on any in any job that you have, and then kind of like maybe thinking, oh, maybe I've learned enough. But at the same time, I could also see there's tons of people that do a job like background painting or there's lots of jobs in animation where you can manage like working a 40-hour job and then also your own personal project. And I think that art directing is so involved. You're so consumed by it that I could see myself going back to BG painting so that I could turn my brain off and then use that like off brain resting time to then switch it back on and work on my own project, But right now I just feel like I could never manage working on anything other than just doing like some artwork here and there, but like never like, I don't know if I could ever do like my own comic or something when my brain is already so busy with this job, but there's also like a great value in being able to do a different, something a little more low key where you can paint backgrounds, character design or whatever, and then truly put yourself into your own project.
Yeah, no, so true. And I did interview somebody who animated for Disney, and then I was talking to him because he was releasing his first picture book, and it sounded like the dream situation that you're talking about right now. So it totally happen.
I've seen a lot of people turn down promotions because they're like, well, this actually working for Disney isn't my or Cartoon Network or whatever studio, like isn't my like main objective. It's just like, it's a great like paid gig. And then also I have this other thing, but I can't be promoted. I can't do it like,
which I kind of got to respect that. Cause then it's kind of knowing definitely what you want out of life and, sticking to it versus kind of like, a lot of people get so high up on the ladder that they turn into like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like I'm not an artist anymore. You get to that point.
Fast. I think definitely like one of my tips would be just like, if you are asked to be promoted, I think that means you can pick that up later if you need to, because it is really hard to find managers of lots of different, parts of the pipeline, art director, director, supervised, revisionist director, like there's all these, promotions in animation. But if you're feeling in your heart like you don't want all that responsibility, know that you don't have to rush into the next promotion. You can just like hang out. It'll happen again. It'll come back to you. It will. Because you have a knack for it. Obviously, someone's asking you to be promoted. But I also sometimes I look back at this job and I'm like, oh, I wish I did do color design for just a little longer, or I wish I had more experience in, if I could have been like a production assistant, I would have loved to take that job, just to like kind of just see more perspectives in this industry and just kind of take your time rather than rushing. I've seen a lot of people rushing for those promotions, but it's not really like the same as like a corporate ladder where you're like, I must get promoted and and quickly. And by the time I'm 30, I better own the place. It's just like, you can relax and enjoy the journey. If you're getting asked to be promoted, then you're probably doing something great, doing something right. It'll come back to you when you're ready.
So. Yeah, these are the good problems to have. Oh no, I got a promotion. Oh no, I have to say no. Because I know what I want out of life. Wow.
Yeah. Oh
no. Who is this person? Last question for you. So I was talking to my therapist and she was saying that like creative people, you have to have something totally different outside to kind of like let you rest, but still like be creative. Do you have anything like that for you that you do just creatively for yourself?
Yes. I've been going through lots of activities I'm trying to find that for myself right now in a way, because I think a lot of things that I used to love in my 20s and teens, I realized that maybe I don't love them anymore. It's so strange. It's strange to be like, I played lots of video games and for some reason I cannot sit down and play a game. So I've been trying out different hobbies, seeing what fits, I think, for me, being with my animals, petting my dog, Cowboy, Simon and Coyote, my animals, like obviously they center me. I've been really into decorating my home and, but even that can get into a weird area because of all those DIY channels on like Instagram and they're way too ambitious. But and just like trying to paint again and doing it with traditional paints, I think is very humbling for me because I'm terrible at it. So
what you were rocking it though and doing like gallery shows, right?
I mean, that was all digital art and I still love digital art, but I can't, but because I have to almost sit exactly where I sit all day for work, I can't it's been hard for me to do personal artwork on the computer. Yeah. So I've just been painting with real paints and, just kind of dealing with it. The fact that I don't have a control delete, button to control Z or whatever. I've been practicing the piano a little bit. I'm looking around at like, what else?
I have surrounded myself with options.
I have I almost like just trying out so many little things. I just got a large record collection from my father that I inherited. And that's been a huge project during the pandemic. It's 7,000 records.
Holy cow. Wow. Yeah. That is huge. My husband has like a little over 1,000. I'm like, we got to talk about the collection. I can only imagine getting in 7,000.
I know. So that's kind of been like my recent hobbies, I guess, is just like, and that even became like almost a home renovation project of just like building shelves for they're 45s. They're not full albums. But yeah, and getting into the collection and like playing a record every once in a while and being like, do I like this? Obviously my dad liked this record. I don't know if I like this one or, and I've been cataloging his records on Discog and things like that. But
have you been looking at the price?
Yeah. Being like, is this worth anything? It has to be.
Right.
It's
Oh, nuts. That's so bad. Yeah,
no,
you can't go to eBay or anything like that. You got to go to the true source.
I know. Well, honestly, my favorite part is finding records that like they're like lost songs. They're nowhere to be found. One of our favorite records together was is a 45 that I think the story, I kind of making this up, but I can't find any information on this artist. And I think because of it says like Virginia Beach like radio station. So I think it might have been just a pressed record for this record or for this radio to just try out and see if it had an audience. And I don't think it went anywhere, but it was a record that my dad and I really liked. It's just a cutesy little, 50s love song, but it's very dear to my heart. I want to try and find the family like that this record like is from, like it must have been a grandpa somewhere out there that made this like in his heyday. And it's like, hey, just so you know, you have like 2 fans. Because I really suspect that maybe it was just like at one point this band tried to make it and, but again, it's just like, it's fun to get into those little tiny hobbies and just kind of see where they go.
Yeah, that reminds me of the documentary Stone Reader. Did you ever see that documentary?
Yeah.
It's basically about a guy who, it's the same guy that did Hoop Dreams, I believe. It's about a guy that basically like loved this book and goes and tries to find the author, and he finds them and they connect, and it's just really interesting. So you have a documentary on your hands to find the creator.
Yes. Yeah. I've been wanting to try and like figure out a way to like kind of make it a splashy viral moment. I don't have a lot of followers, but I know some artist friends that have way more followers than me. So maybe I can like try and get them to like post about it or something. I don't know.
What is your social media? Are you private or are you public?
I'm public. On Twitter, I'm just my name, Kassandra Heller, at Kassandra Heller. And I'm on Instagram. I'm just not the most consistent poster.
I think that's healthy. Don't be consistent.
Yeah.
For you.
I know. On Twitter, I just put my random thoughts out there into the world and then delete them later at that night. And then on Instagram, I just post photos and stuff. I keep saying like I'm keeping social media so that when I put my own art out there again, but because I love that part of social media was putting art out and people actually seeing it rather than it being like just in my sketchbook. But yeah, right now it's a lot of Big City Greens updates, and I do put a lot of like kind of step-by-steps of how certain things in my job come to be, but on Twitter, but
Ooh, okay. I'll have to find some of that. Well, I'm going to say your name as nasally as possible. Kassandra. Was that good? I'm sure you can do it way more. Okay. Kassandra, thank you so much for this awesome chat. And
thank you.
I already just like love the background. I mean, even your background for this Zoom is beautiful. Of course, it had to be.
Thank you. Yep, this is my dining area. Just hung this wallpaper up. But
I want so bad to have like super fancy wallpaper because I feel like that. I miss going to old homes that have wallpaper on them and that personality.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a removable sticker type wallpaper. This is from Spoonflower, and I'm pretty happy with it. But I also like the fact that it's very easy to peel off, and because I could also see myself being like, let's change this. But I also, I know what you mean. I love those old homes that have like wallpaper that just will be there forever. And I've looked into that good stuff, but
I didn't know there was peelable wallpaper.
Yeah, it's super,
Okay.
it's like supposed to be renter friendly, just easy peasy stuff. Although I had to hire help to put it up like a
Oh,
professional because again, those DIY channels, they make it look so easy, but I could not. I can't cut a straight line. So
yeah, or bubbles.
yeah, there's all the air bubbles. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Oh, well, thank you so much for this lovely chat.
Yeah, thank you.